Well, the retention in this offseason for the Illinois men's basketball team is going about as well as you can hope for at this point in the offseason. David Mirkovic, Tomislav Ivisic, Jake Davis, and Zvonimir Ivisic all announcing their returns this past Wednesday. Welcome back to the Illini Audible Podcast. My name is Saeed Bravo. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the pod. As always, I really appreciate it. And obviously, the news of the day being the fact that Illinois' retention efforts are paying off right now, and you're seeing it. Tomislav Ivisic, Zvonimir, David Mirkovic, and Jake Davis all announcing their returns. Massive, so massive after the Final Four run that you had in 2020, 2025, 2026. To be able to have these guys back, just absolutely huge. And the reason, it felt like the wind was going towards this for a little bit, simply because of how well this team gelled and how good this team was. It felt inevitable for this to be the case, but it's worth a conversation about this because you just didn't know, right? Anybody in the college basketball world, even elsewhere, could have come up out of nowhere and shot their shot with a guy like Tommy, a guy like Zvonimir, especially given the fact that he didn't have a crazy big role on this team. And Jake, he did have a crazy big role on this team, but not the significant minutes that he might be looking for personally. And sharpshooter Jake Davis, whose stock really rose in 2025, 2026. You just never know in this era of college basketball, in this era of college athletics. Anybody can come in if they want to, offer a big load of cash, and there you go. There's your answer. But no, right? The winning, the gelling of the guys, obviously two are twins, that all culminated in this team making itself want to return for another run, hopeful run in 2026, 2027. Absolutely huge news. And at this point, you feel really good about where Illinois is at in terms of its off-season planning, its off-season schedule, with so many things going around, the transfer portal, recruiting, and Illinois at this point knowing that you're going to count on at least these four guys when it comes to returning is so important. You have to remember last season, there were so many changes that happened at this point. You had a Ben Humrickhouse, a Jake Davis, of course, who makes another Tomislav Ivisic, and you had a Boswell, Tomislav Ivisic, Jake Davis, and a Kylan Boswell who were returning, and you just didn't know what to expect given the fact that you saw a Casper Zakachonis, a Will Riley depart to the NBA, and you suddenly now you feel really comfortable with what could be ahead for this Illinois basketball team, and to do a little bit more in terms of information when it comes to how big of contributors these guys were. It's absolutely huge. You obviously have a Big Z who provides significant rim protection, an insane blocker. It felt like you had him, right? Like this is one of those guys that was able to provide at least one huge dunk per game. And the fact that he now comes back with a role that could fluctuate with maybe more development under this offensive coordinator that is Tyler Underwood, then maybe you could see his role kind of becoming enhanced or shifting at least a little bit at this point. And Tomislav Ivisic, who is become who they call, and I would agree with this, he is the original Balkan on this Fighting Illini team. He makes his return to this Illinois basketball team for a third season. Absolutely huge. And you have to remember, this is a guy who has been through a lot at this point in his Illinois career, with illnesses and sickness and removed tonsils and rough off seasons. He will have a full summer to get his things together, to really put on as much, manipulate his body weight as much as he wants, get in the shape that he wants to be at with Fletch, get in the weight room, and then address the things that he may want to address coming into this 2026-2027 season. And you feel really good about him coming into this season, this upcoming season, that is, and being a huge contributor. Not only is he just a big contributor when it comes to scoring and rebounding, but at this point, he is, with the third season under his belt at Illinois, he is a locker room leader, and that expectation will continue to be. And obviously, you saw him play, or excuse me, his production drop a little bit. 13 points in 2024-25 this past season, 10.4 points per game. You had that same goes for rebounds, 7.7 to 5.6, 2.3 assists to 1.6 this past season. But you still feel really comfortable. The fact that you get him back, one of your key centers and a centerpiece of, at this point, this program. And that's huge. That's huge to get him back as an anchor of those Balkan guys. It's really, really going to be interesting to see how the season continues. The season will unfold. And 66 games played for the Illini at this point. You feel really comfortable with him coming back. Jake Davis, though, also one of the guys who announced his return. And he is the sharpshooter that came off initially last season in 2024-25, came off the bench, maybe didn't have as much production as you would have wanted / expected that season. And then this year finds himself a role in the starting lineup, albeit somewhat ineffective at points in the season. Can I offer you a Jake Davis corner three, guys? If you know, you know. This is really what you need when it comes to continuing to build your roster and retaining efforts. A guy who now has 2 years of going into the NCAA tournament and Final Four appearance and being in that starting lineup. Who knows what his role will look like? You would suspect that it may be him in the starting lineup once again, but you do wonder if the roles continue to fluctuate. You've secured him. Maybe you explore different options in terms of how you splice up his time distribution, and how he ends up playing where and in which situations. You obviously saw him be clutch at times. That Michigan three foul, the Michigan State free throw shooting that takes Illinois to overtime comes to mind, and a guy that is really well liked here in Champaign. It's really great to see. And obviously, all these four guys, and the fourth guy that I kind of buried the lead, but David Mirkovic, the sophomore incoming sophomore now, who has been really incredible, was incredible this past season. But obviously, all four guys being represented by the same agent, and that agent going on podcast and then talking about how Illinois is so supportive with these international recruits, international players, how they've been treating this, and how impressive it is for these international players to come into college basketball and see the nature of what college basketball could be. And that's been just really impressive for him, and for him to see that. And that's the kind of stuff that where you gave you confidence that these couple guys would want to return. And it felt like Champaign has treated them well. And the fact that you saw in the Final Four how many people showed up, not only in the actual game, but in the open practice, which is, it's an open practice. It's that kind of stuff that matters. And you've seen it now pay off. So you guys have done your job, Illinois fans, to make these guys want to come back and really continue to be a part of what Brad Underwood is continuing to build. And we obviously knew that retention was a priority. It all started with David Mirkovic. David Mirkovic, as a freshman who was stellar, who was probably, who is one of the band favorites at this point. The way he did his announcement, 10 out of 10. It just, you can't ask more. You can't ask more, right? Like, this is a guy who is unapologetically himself and is just a unique human being. I've said it before on this podcast. When I'm out of here, when I'm out of the University of Illinois, I'm going to buy his jersey because I will no longer be covering this team, probably, or I will move to a different role, whatever. Not about me. David Mirkovic, though, just a swell guy and unapologetically himself. You feel really good. The fact that he comes back, you wonder how much it was that Illinois was able to provide in terms of compensation for a guy like him to return. But it's also inevitable to think and feel like the fan base had such a big part in doing in what David Mirkovic's decision was, which ultimately was to return. And now suddenly you have about more than 50% of Illinois' production coming back. It feels like the production / roster, obviously it's just 4 guys that return, but those guys are big time hitters and they return. They're going to be roster leaders. Now the ball is in Andrei Stojakovic's court, because you still wonder if he will want to return. These things probably take time, and I'm sure that his dad has at least some influence in whatever is next for Andre. But you do wonder if there is a new pitch for him, and you wonder if maybe he's a guy that you need to compromise when it comes to, hey, here's what we envision for you to be a starter, or this is what your role could look like. We want to have the same success with you that we had this past season. We know that you want it to look a little differently. Maybe we want it to look differently ourselves as well. That could be a part of the equation. It's going to probably come down to money, though. So you wonder how much of that, will impact, obviously, the fans and having that Final Four success. I think that helps significantly. I'm not sure. Like, I don't know what Andre would do at this point, but I do think that there is a solid chance that he returns simply because of the fact that Illinois had so much success with him in the first season, and you felt like in March, that's when you make your money, and that's where the difference was made, and you saw that in the NCAA tournament. You saw that so many times there. And now you're sitting pretty in the Big Ten, because you have a bunch of guys who are returning, and new guys who look to be providing a lot of depth and providing significant production as well. Quentin Coleman, who is one of the top prospects in the country, is going to be inevitably compared to Keaton Wagler, his predecessor. Those expectations, I think, are completely unrealistic. But with that being said, he is still one of the top prospects in the country, and freshmen can impact a college basketball team. We've seen it time and time again. We've seen it now for 2 years in a row. You wonder if you're going to continue to see that theme. It is likely, I think. And Quentin Coleman is going to be a guy that is thrust into a big-time position early on. Lucas Murillo, who is a guy that I think you feel good about, right? Like, you feel good when he's coming in. He can be a good contributor as a freshman. And you wonder what that role would kind of fluctuate to, how it would look. Ethan Brown, who's going to come in as a freshman, and obviously the Providence transfer, Stefan Box, who provides some pretty good spot-up shooting and will overall look to be a guy who contributes here as one of those bigger guards. And they're going for the same template that they went for this past season, which is the size. The size on this team will continue to be huge. You have big team, and you're going to have good rim protection, and you're going to have a prolific offense, is what you hope to have if you're Illinois. And you wonder if John Blackwell is interested in coming here as well, which is the transfer from Wisconsin. But that's getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. You never know. You wonder, but you don't know, and it'll be interesting to see how that all continues to unfold. But the important thing here is that you have a really, really solid foundation to continue growing this program, to keep going in the same trajectory. It seems like you're going to. Now, things are not going to be completely the same next season. Things could change on a dime. Injury, God forbid. March Madness is known for its variance, right? Like this season, you got a favorable draw. You're not apologizing for it, but the fact is that you got a favorable one. So next season, what is it going to look like? You don't know. So many things could go array, but for now, there's no reason to think about that. Illinois put themselves in a really good position, and that's what matters. That's what you come to expect from this Illinois men's basketball team at this point in Brad Underwood's tenure, at this point in Josh Whitman's tenure as AD. And so that's the news of the day, and that's where we'll leave it at, because I just wanted to come in and provide a little bit of an update and you just a temperature check on how you feel about this Illinois men's basketball program at this point in the offseason. The answer is really, really good, and you hope to see that continue. Andrej Stojakovic, there's the big question mark. Obviously, Brandon Lee and Daxtis and Ty Rogers will have to be guys who also make decisions. But for now, the guy who all eyes should be on and who you will have to pay a lot of attention to, whether or not he decides to leave, it might determine the future of that transfer portal activity, is Andrej Stojakovic. You would hope that he returns simply because of the tenure, simply because of being in the system, simply because of what he showed you in March. But we'll see. We'll see. So yeah, but thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the pod. Subscribe, rate, review, if you so please. I really, really appreciate it. And peace.